Chapter 89. The Levirate. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. And it shall be, that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gates unto the elders, and say, My husband's brother refuseth to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him, and speak unto him. And if he stand to it, and say, I like not to take her, then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, So shall it be done unto the man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. This is certainly one of the more upsetting texts in biblical law for modern man. It goes against the grain for modern men and women. It must be granted that it is alien to almost everything in our culture, so that, to understand it, we must know the context. In biblical law, the family is the basic governmental unit. The family is the law center in a biblically governed society, and it is the source of charity and education. The normal life is family life. Unattached men, women, and children are alien to such a culture. Church and state do not have the centrality belonging to the family. For modern man, society cannot exist without the state. In terms of God's law, society cannot exist without the family. Biblical law does acknowledge the need for civil society, but the state's importance is not equal to that of the family. In terms of this, the perpetuation of the family is very important because it is the foundation of society. The book of Ruth illustrates this. When Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem, we read that all the city was moved about them. Ruth chapter 1, verse 19. Elimelech, Naomi's deceased husband, had a parcel of land needing redemption. The kinsmen of Elimelech who brought the land had the duty of marrying Ruth and rearing a successor and heir for Elimelech. That successor born of a Levirate marriage could be male or female. Lacking a qualifying male heir, girls could inherit, as Numbers chapter 36 makes clear. The Levirate marriage served a double purpose. First, it kept the family intact by providing an heir, and second, it kept the land within the family. The Bible's rigorous concern for the family name and the land clearly stresses the material nature of biblical faith. Spiritual religion comes from Greek Neoplatonism, not the Bible. The godly family leaves an imprint on the physical creation because biblical faith is land-oriented, work-oriented, and family-based. Levirate is a word derived from the Latin lever, meaning brother-in-law. In some circles, notably Orthodox Jews and Hutterites, the Levirate marriage is still practiced. In the New Testament, there are references to it in Matthew chapter 22, verses 23 to 28, and Luke chapter 20, verses 27 to 33. There was no compulsion to fulfill one's Levirate duty, as verses 8 to 10 make clear, but there was shame in the failure The reason for refusal we see in Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 to 8. In that instance, the next of kin to Elimelech hoped to gain Elimelech's land, but not at the price of marrying Ruth. He had apparently hoped that Ruth, as a foreigner, would not qualify, and he would then gain the land. The elders obviously thought otherwise. Clifford's comments called attention to the place of the shoe, verses 9 and 10 in this law. Legal deeds were often accompanied by gestures which showed dramatically the reality of the legal exchange. When one sold a piece of property, for instance, one handed one's shoe to the buyer, showing that the right to walk on the property as its owner has been given up to the buyer. Here, the surviving brother lets the land slip out of family control. This is equivalent to transfer of ownership, hence the stripping off of the sandal. The law, in Deuteronomic fashion, is concerned with the land which the Lord gives, emphasizing how disgraceful it is not to pass the land on to the legitimate descendants. Until recently, that is, this century, in many areas of the world, land had been in the family for centuries, and the protection of the family's land was essential. Land meant freedom, and for a man to be unwilling to perform his levirate duty meant a disavowal of his duty. He was called a shoeless man, or the unsandaled one. He had placed freedom and family low in his estimation. He therefore deserved to have the widow spit in his face. For him, individual goals were more important than family responsibility. To assume that this law tells us that the ancient Hebrews were less individualistic is a sorry assumption, because its premise is that this law comes from folk customs rather than from God. The use of the shoe to transfer property was an ancient one, used in Northern Europe and elsewhere. A levirate marriage was regarded as a continuation of the previous one. The firstborn son was then legally the son of the dead man, or, lacking a son, the daughter. When Ruth gave birth to a son by Boaz, it was legally Naomi's son, and Naomi named the boy Obed. Ruth chapter 4, verses 16 to 17. We can understand the continuing importance of this law to Orthodox Jews when we see that Samson Raphael Hirsch, in his commentary on the Pentateuch, 1966-1982, took from pages 505 to 517 to discuss it. In verse 5, child is properly son. But if no son is born of the levirate union, the daughter succeeds. Numbers chapter 27 verse 4 and chapter 36 verse 8 indicate a daughter could claim the inheritance. In the book of Ruth, there is an additional factor. Not only is there no child, but the land has been alienated and must be redeemed. There is a very important aspect to this law which again eludes the modern man. The need for a son, or lacking that, a strong husband for a daughter, points to an important aspect of marriage: protection and care. A wife or mother requires protection because the world, being fallen, is exploitive of the weak and the helpless. The woman is protected, and the land is maintained. We must remember that, in the Bible, there is no property tax because the earth is the Lord's. Psalm 24, verse 1. This means that to protect the family and to retain the land is to maintain freedom. The family property is in God's sight comparable to an independent realm or kingdom. In the days of power for monarchies, an unbroken succession meant safety for a realm. So too for the family kingdom. Its freedom and succession as a realm had to be maintained. In this context, the family is the freedom center, and its maintenance and perpetuation critically important. Today, this law is a curiosity, but in a free, family-based society, it would again have its place. Strong family-based societies like the Scots practiced the Levirate into the medieval era. We have a reference in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 to 10 to this Levirate practice early in history. Contrary to the contemporary view that this is a callous treatment of women, it was protective of women in that it assured the permanency of their protection where and when this practice was maintained. Finally, there is another aspect of the loosing of the shoe to be considered. The man who refused to assume his Levirate responsibility was guilty of irresponsibility because his thinking was personal and self-centered. There were many such men and too few like Boaz. The many references in the Bible to the needs of widows tell us that irresponsibility was commonplace. Especially if property were involved, it was sometimes simpler to let the widow die and then redeem the property or inherit it. Then every man can operate in terms of self-interest, and social cohesion collapses. The premise of this law is that the family under God is a key law centre and radically essential to society's life and welfare. Apart from this fact, this law is not understandable. Men are God's appointed guardians of his law, and to remove by death the head of a household was a threat to society in that an agent of the law was missing, and the law centre, the family, broken. In antiquity, we find a variety of law centres from the family and father, as in early Rome, to the state, as in Babylon. In all instances outside the biblical revelation, the power is absolute. Freedom, as a result, did not exist. In biblical faith, the law centre is the family under God. The preservation of the family, thus, was the preservation of the law order at the most basic level. It is because, for modern man, the law centre is the state, and man and the family are made increasingly powerless, that the Levirate seems so remote to us. The modern condition is one of a radical separation of power from man and the family by means of status laws and by taxation into impotence and irrelevance. When colonial judge James Otis said that every man's house is his castle, he echoed biblical law, wherein a man's house and land are non-taxable, and patriarchal man is a law centre. We have echoes of such a law order in the still existing part of the citizen's arrest, something unique to a Christian culture. As against this, we now have a land and property tax, women's quote-unquote rights, and children's quote-unquote rights. All this leads to the emasculation of man. The biblical position is not one of rights, but of duties towards God and man. The modern mind's focus with respect to this law is on the sexual aspect, whereas God's law places the family and mutual responsibility at the centre. The difference between the two approaches is very great.